be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, I have come to cast fire upon the earth, and oh, how I wish it were already blazing. There is a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. A father would be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother-in-law, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Brothers and sisters, as I've been talking about the last few months, we are living in a very exciting time to be alive. For a few centuries there, it was like the culture was becoming more and more secular and more hostile to God and to religion, and we're seeing that being completely reversed right before our eyes. Right? It seemed like something that was never going to happen. It's like the church was just going to keep shrinking right, over time. And yet, over the course of the last couple of years or so, we're seeing this return to traditional values and to religion. And there's a number of reasons for this, but I think one of the central reasons for this is the discoveries of science that are becoming more available now that you don't necessarily have to go to a PhD program or a university to have access to information. The internet is making lots of information available to people at just literally on your cell phone. And so basically we're seeing a reversal of a scientific trend. Ever since the days of Galileo, really, there was this movement in modern science that was taking the ancient view, which saw the world and mankind as like this great mystery in creation, right, that God had made perfectly. Right? And really starting with Galileo, discovering that the earth was not the center of the solar system, right, and all those different things, it seemed to say that our place in the universe was actually not so special at all. And it culminated right, with the discoveries of Charles Darwin, right, and the widespread scientific theory of evolution. So then we're not just talking about the universe, but then we're talking about human beings and basically saying, there's nothing really special about humanity. We are just further along in the evolutionary process than all the other animals. Really, human beings are just, animals who have fully developed. Right? This was the understanding. And thanks be to God, this is becoming reversed because of many discoveries, especially over the course of the last 100 years. And you've heard me talk about some of them before, but one of the other ones that is very interesting that's coming to light, especially today, and it's drawing a lot of attention from academia and scientists and professors, is the mystery of the human soul. The mystery of the human soul. Again, if evolution is fully true and we are just fully developed animals, eventually science should be able to explain everything about the human soul. It should basically be like a machine. And yet, the more we're learning about souls, the more it's showing forth the mystery that each of us possesses in our soul. Some doctors and scientists, they're beginning to coin this phrase. They call human beings that we have the miracle of consciousness. that there's things about our consciousness that are so unexplainable that the only way to describe it is a miracle. Another thing that is very interesting, especially to me, there's a whole new branch of psychology and science that's actually developing the mystery of the soul. It's called parapsychology. And one of the reasons why parapsychology is becoming very common, right, is it's studying the phenomenon of near-death experiences. So I'm sure all of you are familiar. A near-death experience, basically somebody is close to death or somebody dies. Right? Hopefully nobody died just there. Everybody okay? All right, very good. But when somebody is close to death, right, oftentimes people will have certain experiences, like they start to see certain things. And even more interesting, due to medical technology nowadays, there are people who are literally in a hospital who actually die. They are clinically dead for minutes at a time, sometimes even up to an hour or so. And then because of the advance of medicine and technology, right, they're literally brought back to life. They're revived. And now it's becoming so common that, again, like I said, this is becoming a whole branch of science, as people are investigating these experiences. And there's lots of really interesting things that they've discovered. First of all, they've discovered that many of these people, they claim that after they die, it wasn't that everything just went black. It's that they continued to be alive. And it's like their soul could still sense things. Many of them describe a certain out-of-body experience that they have. And some of them, what's even stranger about them is they're able to describe in great detail what they saw. Things that they have no business understanding. Like one of the most famous examples is there was a teenager who had actually been blind from birth. Never been able to see anything. And he claimed that when he died, he could sense his soul leaving his body and he could see everyone in the hospital room. And then as he continued to go up towards the sky, he found himself outside and he could see the hospital and the parking lot. And he even described for people what the roof of the hospital looked like. Even as something as minor as a missing tennis shoe, right? A random tennis shoe on top of the roof. And he claimed to have seen it. And sure enough, it was verified later on. What these near-death experiences has started to reveal is that, again, there is a certain mystery to the human soul. There's a part of humanity that can't simply be put under a microscope or measured by physical experiments. There's a certain mystery about human beings and their soul. I was thinking about this this weekend as I was reflecting on the readings, because in the readings this weekend we hear from the letter to the Hebrews, and it's one of the clearest examples that the Bible talks about another mystery, and it's the mystery of the communion of saints. When people die, again, contrary to what formerly many atheistic scientists thought, it's not like everything just ends. The soul continues to exist and live on. And in a sort of mysterious way, sometimes human beings, we actually can sort of feel the connection with those who have passed on. Some of you maybe have the experience of having a loved one or a family member who has died. And sometimes it's almost like you can sense their presence at times watching over you. A lot of times at funerals, families will tell me it's like they find themselves talking to their deceased spouse in their home. Not in a normal face-to-face way, but again, it's like they sense the presence. That's the communion of saints. When people die and pass on, whether they go to purgatory or heaven, it's not like It's not like they go to some galaxy far away. It's as if they passed through a window. And sometimes they're still mysteriously present to us, but never fully. That's the communion of saints. That's what we believe. Ever since the time of the Protestant Reformation, this teaching of the church has come under great scrutiny and criticism, right? There are many Protestant theologians out there and pastors and stuff. They'll say, Catholics, it's like you're committing idolatry by focusing on the saints. Or the book of Deuteronomy, it says that we shouldn't try to contact the dead. It's called necromancy. And so sometimes Protestants will bring this up to us. Right? Necromancy is not at all like what we do with the saints. Right? Necromancy means you go to some conjurer or psychic or seer and you literally try to bring the dead person back, right? Like a ghost. That's not what we do. We just recognize that after people have passed on, they're still mysteriously aware of what happens in this world. Again, the next world is not some galaxy far away. It's as if it's just going through a window or a doorway and still mysteriously close. There are some examples from the Bible. We know this is true as a matter of fact, that, talking to the dead, as like we do with the saints, is not completely forbidden. Like, for example, Jesus at the Transfiguration. He was talking to Moses and Elijah. They'd been dead. And yet they were able to be present to him. In the time of the Maccabean revolt, it said that the prophet Jeremiah actually appeared to the general Judas Maccabeus. Even in the stories we hear at Christmas every year, one of the most famous examples that many of us, it's like we don't even really realize the significance of it. And again, something that people often say about our devotion to the saints is they'll say, why do people in heaven, why would they even care about us anymore? Right? And yet, every year at Christmas, we hear the story about the birth of Jesus. And that when Jesus was born, King Herod, he persecuted all the children in Bethlehem who were 2 years old and younger. And then there's this famous verse that many of us, we just completely ignore. It says, "And then there was a voice heard. Rachel was weeping for her children." Rachel, if you recall, Rachel was the wife of Jacob, and Jacob became the father of the tribes of Israel. And so Rachel was considered kind of like the mother of Israel, the matriarch of Israel. And according to that gospel passage we hear every year at Christmas time, it says that when Rachel heard about the infants being martyred, she wept for them, even though she had already been dead for over 1,000 years. Even to this day, if you go to Bethlehem, there are still Jews to this day who go and they pray at the tomb of Rachel because they see her as like an intercessor, as their mother. Right? It's very similar to what we believe about Mary, who is our mother, Queen of Heaven. So don't ever believe somebody who says, the Bible condemns this devotion we have to the saints. Again, the Bible, it celebrates the saints. Right? The reading we heard from the letter to the Hebrews says that we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. And it's talking about the saints. The whole previous chapter of the book is talking about all the heroic and courageous men and women of the Old Testament who are now members of the divine assembly. And it describes the saints, it describes it like we on this earth, it's like we're in a stadium and we're in the game or we're in the battle, and the saints are surrounding us from above and they're cheering us on. That's how the Bible describes the saints. The book of Revelation, it describes the communion of the saints and the angels, and it's like this myriads and myriads of saints in triumphant procession worshiping around the throne of God and interceding and praying on our behalf. The book of Revelation says the incense we use at Mass, that's what it describes. It symbolizes the prayers of the saints rising up to heaven. Again, this idea of the communion of saints, it's not something for us to be embarrassed about. It's one of the most beautiful things about our faith. That God, when He created us, He didn't want us just to have a relationship with Him, but instead He wanted to make a family. And the saints are our family in heaven. When you go into somebody's home and you see that they have, pictures of their deceased relatives and stuff, you don't call them idolaters. It's because they're just showing their love for their family. And the communion of saints, it fills us. The more we think about the saints, the more we acknowledge the pain we feel that we are separated from our deceased friends and relatives. It fills us with a longing to one day join them. Pray God. It fills us with a yearning of heaven. It's a beautiful teaching of the Church.